Hello everybody and welcome back to Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson, and today I have a video for you all about one of the first plants I ever bought when I started my YouTube channel 3 years ago. And that is this beautiful plant behind me here, this tall vining plant. This is a Raphidophora tetrasperma. And I did a couple of videos on this plant when I first bought it. I did a Raging Iraq video, and then I did a video where I repotted this plant onto a frame. And it just grew out so beautifully for me. And I am so pleased I still have this plant in my collection. And I'm quite surprised I have, because this plant has been quite thoroughly plagued with thrips for a couple of years now. I've sprayed and sprayed and sprayed this plant. I've tried using neem oil with a mix of dishwashing liquid. I've wiped the leaves down, and I took this plant when it wasn't this big out to my outdoor terrace garden and I could spray it with the hose and so forth. But now, as it's grown up like this, I can't move this plant at all. The only thing I can do is spray it now and again. But this plant, to this day, still has a thrips problem on it. And well, it's still here, it's still going on, and it's all the way up to the ceiling of this room. And the bottom part of the vines now are completely bare. There are no leaves because the plant has grown up. And when you let these plants grow upwards, the lower leaves do start disappearing as well with time, because the plants go up, they grow bigger leaves, and they're up where the light is. So they don't need to use energy on the lower part of the vines for producing energy. So they'll just be vines without leaves. But these plants really do have the most beautiful shaped leaves. And I do want to show you this plant a little bit closer up. There are a few browning patches and a few patches where you can see these thrips attack this plant. So if you do have one of these plants, I found that this plant, the same as plants in the Monstera family, my Monsteras in my indoor terrace garden here have been absolutely decimated with thrips. I do have my lovely Monsteras, my large form and small form in my cottage, and there are no thrips there, and those plants are doing very well. But here there's been a thrip problem because there's been so many house plants close together for so many years, and I can't go and just spray them all with a hose and so forth, and I'm not here all the time. So the population of these insects do grow even though I try and keep them down. And that is the reality if you have a lot of plants together in a indoor situation. There's not the airflow that they need, there's no natural rain, and there aren't any of these helpful insects around unless you release them yourself in your home, of course. So these plants are having to cope with this unnatural indoor situation the best they can with the help of me, and of course all of you with all of your plants in your own situations at home. So I'm really pleased that this plant is still with me anyway after 3 years. It is a survivor. So let's go in for a closer look at this plant up and down just to show how it's been doing after 3 whole years in this situation here. So here we go, here's my plant, and it is very, very common and normal for these plants to leg out and get bare stems at the bottom as the leaves grow out towards the top, and it will try to reach the ceiling of your room and then start vining around the room if it has something to hold on to. Sometimes they actually attach themselves to the wall, so you have to be careful. But this plant, yeah, it's reached the ceiling and it's going to start spreading around the room now. I do have some wires that are see-through, plastic, that they can eventually hold on to. I could easily go in and prune this plant back at all the different internodes and make me cuttings and start off another bushier plant, but I'm enjoying this plant like this. It's just going to stay like this. I love the shape of the leaves. I love that it's hung around with me for the last 3 years since the beginning of me starting my channel. So it's really, really nice to see that even in the conditions in my indoor terrace garden here, this plant is a survivor. It really is. The light hasn't been that bright and it has managed to carry on. So I would suggest this plant for anybody who's getting into houseplants because it really is a survivor. And what better than these gorgeous leaves? So I really hope you enjoyed seeing this plant a little bit closer up, and you can see how a plant transforms and becomes longer and leggy. And I've decided I like the look of this plant just growing up and out to the sides up here. It fills out the corner of this part of my indoor terrace garden quite well. But I could, of course, just like with any other vine, go in and I could chop this plant up, prune it up. I could do water propagations or soil propagations and start the plant again, make a smaller plant, a more compact plant, a hanging plant or whatever. I'm not going to. I'm very happy and proud that this plant is still with me, so I'm just leaving it to do its thing. And I go and prune off any yellowing leaves or leaves that are really badly being attacked by thrips. But most of the plants in my indoor terrace garden that I have left now are plants that cope very well with low light situations like this plant does. It would prefer a bright indirect light situation to do best, but it does cope also with a lower light situation. It's in a corner here. It has these fairy lights on it. It's close to the window by the side, and there are grow lights in this room, and that has sustained this plant for all these years anyway. But the fact that it's getting attacked so much by thrips, no other insects, it's only thrips, is an indication that this plant is not in its prime, that it's being attacked, it's weak, its immune system's weak and so forth. That makes it easy for insects to attack it. It's not vigorously growing, it's not vigorously pumping out a lot of energy and defense systems to keep these insects down. And of course the unnatural environment, as I mentioned just before. But still, this is my plant and I'm happy with that. Now, many of you have been asking me about a cutting I took a long time ago as well now. This must be also around 1.5, 2 years ago. I took a cutting from this plant that showed a unique growth, and I've kept that plant going as much as I can, but it's been struggling and struggling and struggling. So it's grown out a few times and then the leaves have all fallen off. It's grown out a few times, the leaves have fallen off, and that cycle has carried on. But now this plant, and don't expect anything big, it's much smaller than the original cutting that I took of the plant, which was quite big with lovely big leaves. This is a much smaller plant. It's got a very compact vine or stem, we can call on this little plant that I'm going to show you in a moment, but it is still going and the leaves are still this mutated shape. So I really hope I can keep this plant going even though it's small. Let me show you it here after such a long time. So finally, after your many, many requests to see how this mutated part of my plant has been doing, the first thing I want to show you is, because it's regrown new leaves many times over now, it has gone back to reverting to these immature leaves. So there we go, you can see the immature leaf. There are no slits in this leaf, and that's how immature leaves start out. But when the leaves come out in their natural style, then you'll see. And this one has still got like the 2 lobes at the bottom and the extended top. So look at this leaf, you can see it still has that sword shape. The 2 lobes at the bottom and the longer piece at the top. So if we look at the next one here, here you go, you can still see it has that kind of swordy shape. The long point at the front and that shape at the bottom. This one has a half slit, and then we have another smaller one down here. The 2 halves at the bottom and then the longer piece at the top. And what haven't I shown? This one here. Have I shown this one? I'm not sure if I just showed you this one, but there you go. I don't think so. So they all have this same mutation. If I can try and lift the whole plant up, you might be able to see better. So there you go, you can see a couple of the leaves now. So this plant still has that mutation in the leaves, and I haven't seen this anywhere else still, but this is the way it's going. So if you look at the stems at the bottom, you can see how much they've thickened out, but they haven't managed to grow out any longer. Because as I said, the plant has been growing out leaves, it's been dying back, growing out leaves, dying back. And this plant has just started growing out like these thick bobbles on the vine. It's quite strange, quite mutated. But as I said, this plant is still going strong. It's still with me. And it also has been attacked by thrips. I can see all the lines and things in the leaves now that I have it in more light. But other than that, it's quite healthy. This is doing quite well this time, and it's had these leaves like this for months now. They just haven't grown out any more than this. But they have actually been like this for months. I mean, this was the cutting that I took off this main mother plant. And as you saw in the close-up, the leaves are nothing like the leaves on this plant. They've got many more slits in those leaves, and they have the shape that we're used to when we look at a Raphidophora tetrasperma. But this is still something else. So I'm doing my absolute best, believe me, to keep this little plant going as it is, because this is very special. And that is why I wanted to make this video. I finally have got round to making another video about this plant. But how could I have done a video with this plant with no leaves on it? Sometimes it's just been the vine, it's just been the stem. But all of this has grown back again, and it's been sustainable for months. So I know that this plant is doing very well. So that's all I had for you for this video, an update of my beautiful Raphidophora tetrasperma, my mother plant that I've had for 3 years now, and my cutting with the mutation that I took a while back. And I suggest you go back and see that video so you can see how this was back then compared to how it is now. But the fact that it's still going means that I might at some point have a plant that grows out even more, and then I can try and take cuttings to see if those cuttings are stable and come out with exactly the same leaves as this, or if they revert back to the original plant. But the way that the stem and everything's growing out on this, I don't think they will. I think this is going to be a stable plant, and I might be able to get a new design, but it's taking time for this plant to really take off. So anyway, all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming up, and I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.